Hi, and welcome to the Restorative Wellness Clinicians Corner, video series exclusively for functional health professionals, where we interview the top experts in the latest research, products, tools, and best practices for getting your clients exceptional results. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited about today's episode of the Restorative Wellness Solutions Clinicians Corner. I've been looking forward to this since January, and I'm going to tell you why. So about 3 or 4 years ago, when Anne and I, so for those of you who are new to RWS, Anne is the founder of RWS, and she and I were writing the capstone course, the Art and Science of Clinical Mastery. And it was a push. I mean, we had been working on this course for like 4 to 5 years, and we finally put the stake in the sand and said, okay, we're just announcing the first go date, and it's going to be September. And I can't remember what month it was, like April or May. It was not far enough away from September. It was like we had just had so much that we needed to get through between then and September. And she came to me and she said, oh my gosh. So she was writing the neurology modules and she said, I've just found this amazing tool. You've got to check it out. It's called Brain FM. And I was like, very skeptical. And she said, no, seriously. You listen to it while you're working and it allows you to just dial in and get focused. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, I am the kind of person that any kind of like auditory distraction is that to me. It's a distraction. Like somebody is playing music in 2 rooms away and I'm like the person who goes over and says like, can you turn that down? I can't focus. So I was highly skeptical. But I tried it. I trust Anne. She said, you just try it. And there's like at the time, I don't know if there still is, but there was a trial for like 3 or 4 days. So I thought, okay, I'll try it. And I put it on and I started my work and I was doing writing work. So this is creative work, which is the kind of thing that normally it would be like sacrilegious to have any kind of music. I started writing and I sort of looked up and it was like 90 minutes later and so much had just gotten done in those last 90 minutes. And I was like, wow, what just happened? I mean, I can't even really tell you what happened in those 90 minutes other than I was just so dialed into what I was doing that sort of the world around me ceased to exist. And I was able to concentrate and produce and tap into my creativity and my flow. And it was really powerful. And I have been a huge fan of Brain FM ever since. So that was several years ago when we were writing level 4. And this January, I was in Costa Rica with my husband at a retreat, and I was talking with this wonderful guy, Dan, and he was telling me a little bit about his business and stuff. And as he was describing it, I was like, wait a second, what's the name of your company? And he's like, Brain FM. And Dan, I don't know if I just like hugged you. I can't remember, but I definitely freaked out in that moment because I
definitely freaked out a little bit.
I completely freaked out. And so from that conversation, I am so excited that Dan Clark, who is the CEO of Brain FM, is here with us today to help us unpack this. I should tell you a little bit about Dan, and then we're going to dive in and kind of unpack how sound can be manipulated to really inspire these different states neurologically. So Dan Clark is a serial entrepreneur, traveler, and the CEO of Brain FM, which is an innovative technology company that helps users be more productive through the use of functional music created by composers and artificial intelligence. One of my personal favorite tools that I just told you about. Sorry, I was editing his bio. Forgot that I did that. Dan has been in love with technology and its potential to positively impact the world for as long as he can remember. From building websites when he was 13, starting a design and advertising business at 18, and driving millions in revenue for multinational brands as director for a boutique ad agency, he has truly been at the forefront of how technology can exponentially grow successful businesses. And I just want to say, change lives, because what you're doing is so much more than just about business. So Dan, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. And I would love you to start us off by telling us your journey with Brain FM.
Yeah, of course. Well, I first want to just appreciate everyone being here and thank you for inviting me. I'm very passionate about Brain FM and always excited to talk about it. I'll dive right in. So I have a very similar story, actually. So I came across Brain FM as a user. I'm not the founder of the company. There's two founders before me. And, as was just mentioned, I started as basically building websites, kind of graduated building out apps, more from an entrepreneurial place of like, how can we make technology to help people, reach more people and help more people. So I really like to focus on companies that were solving problems and use technology to enhance that. And I reached this point in my career where I kind of drifted away from those goals of like making the world a better place and was kind of optimizing for making more money. And then I was trying to find my way, and I actually came across Brain FM. And I remember listening the first time in the same way as mentioned earlier. And I used to work from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. That was my natural flow state, which is what's called now. And I recognized that was it. So I used to go out on a date at, late, and then I'd be like, okay, this is great. And then I'd go to work, so it's interesting. But I remember putting on for my first time, like in the afternoon, and just like dropping right in to like, it's 2:00 in the morning. You've had 2 cups of coffee. You have something due tomorrow, and you're staying all night to do it. And it was just this really great, but like switch, almost like a light switch. And I was just so excited about it. I remember using it a bunch, and I called up the founders, basically 12 times just to like talk to them. And I was like, I want to work for you. And they were like, no, we don't have any money. And I was like, cool, I'll work for free. Like this is going to change the world. I just want to be part of this. Right. And started basically getting on board there. It's a longer story to be CEO, but basically I ended up working for free, leading the tech team, and then becoming CEO and purchasing the company. And it's always been around this thing of, we have this opportunity using real science to help people. And we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but like we spend a lot of money on science. Our director of science has a double PhD from MIT and Harvard in auditory neuroscience. And it's really important that we do this the right way, because there's a lot of solutions out there. And I think for us to make an impact, we have to be able to back those solutions up and make a product that stands on its own, right? And our mission is basically to help 1 billion brains be better, and that's what we're starting to achieve.
I love it so much. And as we were just chatting about before we joined the session here, we have very similar journeys, because you came to Brain FM not as the founder, but as a user and as like just like the absolute avatar of this, the skeptic coming in and getting fantastic results. And it's very similar to my journey with RWS, taking that very first class as a practitioner and having these transformative results. And here I am now, owning and running the company. So I love that little side piece. I want us to dive in about, and let's kind of start at the beginning and talk about really what specifically Brain FM is doing, because, I love this idea of using a tool as simple, although also as complex as sound, to manipulate our neurological state. And we're talking here, we've both used examples of getting into that kind of focus and flow, but there's all sorts of different states that we can get into, whether it's relaxation and calm, whether it's sleep, whether it's focus, whether it's just like cranking through that inbox, there's many different things that we can use it for. So can you explain to us both at that really high level, as well as the kind of the nitty gritty of how this is working, like how you can use sound to inspire those neurological changes?
Sure. So we can go, you're right, high level, and then we can go as low level as anyone wants to, right? So high level, we have different patterns in our brain that are going on. So if you put an EEG, which measures the electrical impulses in your brain, you can actually record what those patterns are. Similarly, if you put someone in an fMRI scanner, which basically shows your blood flow to different regions of the brain, you can see patterns there, right? So if I'm in deep focus, I have a lot of blood flow to my prefrontal cortex. If I have in deep focus, I have a certain electrical pattern that's going on in my brain. And as you can imagine, if I'm in focus or if I'm in sleep, or I'm in relaxation, they're all different patterns, right? Very well known in science, right? And documented. And what we do is we're actually adding patterns to music through something called modulation, which is in bass frequencies, which I will get into later. But we're adding patterns to music that when you're listening to these patterns, they basically start changing the patterns in your brain or helping you start moving into those patterns. So if you're trying to focus, right, you will eventually get to that focus pattern, hopefully, right? But our bodies and our brains aren't designed to basically go into focus when we want to, right? It's more on, it can be determined on what you eat. You can be determined on, pharmaceutical. It could be determined on, did you sleep last night? All these things, because our brains and bodies are really complex. So what we're doing is kind of like an assist, which is kind of like when you're running and there's a wind on your back, which allows you to get into focus or sleep or relax faster, but also stay there longer. And yeah, it's really about disguising that pattern. So we actually do it in all different types of music. We make all the music in-house, which we can get into later, but it's from classical to electronic to jazz music, that we're all making different types of music and putting these patterns in to change the brain.
And you don't notice it, like just as somebody, if there's anybody here who's already used it, I'd love to, I already see some comments in the chat, so we'll definitely come and answer some of those questions and interact with you guys. But it's not obvious is what I'm saying. Like sometimes, and I've tried a little bit some of the other tools, and I don't know, it feels almost like disruptive somehow. Like it's so overt that it's not effective. It's like a bad magician. You're like, I saw what you did there. Can't fool me, right? Like, whereas there's something about this that it just happens and you're not really aware of it. Like I'm really interested in like digging into some of these pieces about the modulation, and it makes a lot of sense about these different patterns. And it does feel like that ability, because like focus is such a good one. We just want to be able to focus on demand or relax on demand. And it's that on demand piece that, unless it's some kind of external stimuli, like, something really alarming, then our bodies are really good at the on-demand.
Yep.
But other than that, some of these other things that are maybe more functional and maybe more productive, more calming, it can be really challenging for a lot of people to get there. And that's something that I just notice is with this, that it happens very subtly, but very powerfully.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the way we are trying to use the product, right, is that our brains and bodies are, I feel like I'm telling this, I don't need to say this here because everyone can tell me this more than I can, but our brains and bodies are amazing, right? We know more about Pluto than how our brain works, right? And a lot of things we're still discovering and understanding about our bodies, right? So what we're doing is we're trying to basically tap into the things that we understand about the brain to allow it to be assisted rather than trying to fight it to do something it's not designed to do. So one of those examples actually, so I talked about modulation, right? Yes. There's other things like salience, and salience is the difference between sounds. So if you're listening to music, normal music, or if you're, I don't know, in a car and someone beeps their horn, the reason why you hear it is because it's a big change in sound, right? And what happens is when you're listening to something or even looking at stuff, it actually goes through your brainstem, right? It goes through the fight or flight response. So what's happening sometimes when you listen to music, even though it's entertaining, because there's big salience effects there, it actually can be distracting, because those are actually designed that if you're walking in the forest and you hear a twig snap, is that a bear trying to eat me, right? Those are the mechanisms that exist in our brain. And even though we live a life with not bears around us all the time, it's still, there's these small cues that basically can distract us from getting into the flow state or switching into relaxed state. It's very easy, as you were just mentioning, Margaret, to get into hyper, oh my gosh, what's going on? But it's really difficult to get the other way. And that's, again, the solution that we're trying to do and package into a button.
I love it. I love it. Can you explain a little bit how this is different from other auditory tools? Thinking of are like the binaural beats. I've heard of isochronic tones, or even just having like normal soothing music playing in the background. Like you've got some like little classical acoustic guitar on track or something like that. Like why, like, can you explain how it's different from some of those other technologies?
Yeah, sure. So I think first, maybe I'll just talk about sound in general or music in general, and then talk about those technologies, right? So what's really interesting about sound or not sound, music, right, is music was invented first for functional purpose, right? So if you think the earliest pieces of music was actually around religion and war, right? To like make armies march together, to help people in religious ceremonies, to have everyone dance together, right? But dancing in the beginning was not entertainment. It was more of like part of the culture, right? And it wasn't until technology that it wasn't just the kings that had music in their house, right? It's all of us, right? And what started happening was we went away from functional music to aesthetic, I guess, music, where it's more of like artful and it's entertainment, right? And the challenge with entertainment music is it's not built for purpose. The purpose is entertainment, right? So a lot of times you go to like a spa or you go to I don't know, you like Spotify, you type in like focus music, and what they're doing is they're taking entertainment music and they're saying, hey, this is now work music. But it was never built to work to, right? Scientifically, it was just built to sound like it's work music, right? And even like classical music and things like that, people say, hey, this is really good to work to, it'll help you. But if you actually look at studies on the topic, it violates a lot of principles that we in science have found that help us get into those certain kinds of states. And now with science being able to be more accessible with EEGs and all that stuff, there's a lot more information out there. So anyway, that's kind of like the like brief history, I guess, of kind of like where music is. And there has been attempts to get more functional. So you mentioned isochronic tones and binaural beats. If anyone's ever heard of those before, binaural beats was an attempt, I think, in the 70s to do function. And there's this really interesting thing where if you play one frequency in one ear and one frequency in another, what happens is it combines in your brainstem, that reptilian part of your brain, one of the earliest parts of our brain, and it basically creates an amplitude modulation between the difference of frequencies. And that difference actually propagates from the back of our brainstem to our prefrontal cortex, and what allows binaural beats to work, right? Brain FM is actually doing the same exact thing, but instead of doing binaural beats, we're creating these beats through AI and stuff that pre-process everything. So as you listen to it, it's already has that amplitude. So we can skip from your brainstem right to your prefrontal cortex. And because of that, we have a higher resolution. So with binaural beats, some people have had amazing experiences and some people haven't. And the difference is because it's like taking a camera from the first flip phone compared to the iPhone camera now. It's just there's just a lot more technology and there's a lot more resolution, right? And that's the reason why we're able to have a greater effect. And the effect actually works in the same amount of time that you listen to a song that you like, and you kind of like do a little dance, like you're kind of like, oh, I got the beat, I'm excited. That's actually a method called entrainment. And that's how fast your brain starts syncing to sound. Because again, we have all these parts in our brain that are really, really good at pattern recognition. And what we're doing is we're just taking advantage of that to help you unlock a certain state.
That makes so much sense. And it makes sense as to why it happens so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Exactly.
one of the biggest things, because I tried other tools, I tried some other things, and it was like, I don't know if it ever got there because I was over it by the time, I just never seemed to get there, or it would take forever. Or even, sort of things for sleep and relaxation. It would just take so long to get into that state. Whereas really the thing that I love, I'm extremely impatient. And what I really love about Brain FM is that it's just like, it's a little bit like you said earlier, it's a little bit like flipping a switch, which feels like it almost feels too easy, but it's awesome. I mean, I'll just take it, right? It's just and it's so without any kind of chemical intervention, right? Like this is, it's better. There's no jitters like drinking a cup of coffee. There's none of those other kind of side effects that you get. It's just that like super speed. So I think that this is fantastic. I want to talk about applications because I'm already seeing questions here in the chat. Ellen's asking about using it for sleep or ADHD, brain fog, concentration, and memory. So let's talk about some of the different applications. And we've talked a lot about the focus piece. And I would love to, I personally will share that I feel like, not that it erases brain fog, but if I am feeling really brain foggy and tired and just like, this is, I still have to perform. It's not a day where I can go meditate or take a nap or something like that. I find that this really is an amazing antidote without any other like substance or things. Tell us about some of the coolest applications that you're seeing. And then I want to talk about overall, and then I really want us to dive into some of the ones you're seeing from a clinical perspective.
Yeah, of course. So I guess before we do that, I'll just kind of share a little bit more context on like what's happening in your brain.
Sure.
Because it's just so easy to go really down to like neurological levels. And I want to make sure it's graspable, but we can always dive down further.
Totally.
So, I talked about those pattern syncing, right? And what's happening in that pattern is you can kind of think of your brain like a Christmas tree, right? You have different areas of your brain and they're like lighting up all different times.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're actually aligning the Christmas tree to all blink at the same time. And the process is basically of neurons, and collections of neurons create something called functional networks in your brain. And basically, the more functional networks that are synced or blinking at the same time, the easier it is for those functional networks to transmit information, right, across your brain. So what's happening is as you're like aligning patterns, right, it's easier to align those functional networks. Consequence, or something that consequence is probably the bad word, but like what happens as a natural effect of that is blood flow actually changes in your brain as a result. So you can kind of think about this specifically we'll talk about ADHD right now, with certain kinds of ADHD medication. You're getting blood flow changes in your brain from a pharmaceutical solution, and we're doing it from an electrical solution. So we're creating a different electricity, so to speak. If my neuroscience here, he wouldn't like that word, but we're creating different electricity in the brain, which is creating different blood flow in the brain. So specifically, we do in our app right now, do focus, relax, sleep. We're bringing back nap. We're actually adding and researching energy, and then kind of playing with workout right now, which is probably too early to say. But those are some things that we're really, really interested in. We do have a variety of uses in all of those. Some people use nap for, they don't actually go to sleep. They do like not sleep deep rest with it. So they close their eyes for 10 minutes and they feel like they took a 90-minute nap. So we can go through all those use cases. In focus, we actually have activities like deep work or creative work or learning. And what we're doing is we're just like fine tuning the things that you're listening to. Specifically for ADHD, actually one of our papers that's being in review from Nature right now, which is a very big academic journal, is specifically for adults with ADHD using Brain FM. And what we found is we can actually tweak that modulation if we know you have ADHD and ramp it up even higher. And you can kind of think of it as someone with ADHD has high distractibility. So it's kind of like we give your brain a fidget spinner, right, to entertain your mind just a little bit, right, which allows you to get less distracted with thoughts of like, oh my gosh, should I leave the oven on? Or what did this person really say when they meant this, or meant when they said this? And it really is helpful on that setting for people with neurodivergent tendencies like ADHD, like autism. I also have dyslexia, which was also helpful. So you'll hear me like switch words by accident. Sorry, I don't have Brain FM on. But those things are very helpful. And then when we go into things like sleep, it's the same exact process, but it's actually a different pattern. So while I'm not going to come here and say that everyone should stop using pharmaceutical drugs and just use Brain FM, we do have a lot of our users that write in and say, hey, I haven't slept in 30 years. I have insomnia and I use Lunesta and I use all these other kinds of drugs, but I actually started using Brain FM and I've decreased my dosage, or other people have completely stopped using those. And again, I'm not here to prescribe anything. If I was, we'd have to do a bunch of clinical studies. But we are on that path of trying to create a +1 product where it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. Say you don't have any ADHD at all, it still makes you better. Or if you have super ADHD, it still makes you better, right? And it's trying to enhance everyone. So I'm happy to go
into that for one quick second.
Yeah, jump in.
This is really powerful because I want everyone to be thinking about this when we have clients who are on medications, and clearly it's out of our scope of practice as well, unless you have a medical license to be recommending someone go off any of these. But if those clients are wanting to do that, they're working with their medical provider to do that. We're already supporting them from a nutritional perspective. We're supporting them with their gut healing. We're doing, we've got the supplements, we've got these other tools that can really help support that process. How powerful to add something as simple as sound to the toolkit. It's so non-intrusive. It's ridiculously affordable. And it is just, I just think it's a really powerful tool that we can be using that will complement and enhance all of the other pieces that we're doing, whether we're speaking about, someone who is neurodivergent, who is having trouble sleeping. I would imagine with anxiety, it would definitely help. There's a lot, I can just think of a lot of different cases. Oh, someone's asking for a link. Do you want to pop a link in the chat? Is it just brainfm.fm? Yeah,
that's it. I can give everyone a specific link, or I can follow with some science that we're talking about too. I can send that to you afterwards. We have a lot of stuff on our website with that, but yeah, happy to provide more context on any of the things I'm talking about.
When we're talking about, because I know within each of those big categories, like just, we talked about, even like within sleep, for example, you can correct me on the categories, but I know there's one that's like deep sleep. It's always the one that I go for. There's like 3 or 4 other categories within sleep itself. And then within each one of those, there's all sorts of other pieces that you as a user can manipulate and control for, right? So like you can change the duration, which is fairly straightforward. You can choose different sounds. You can choose the intensity of the effect. So can you speak a little bit about that? Because I can feel like the complexity of this. If there's already these different patterns, and then like within the overall pattern of sleep, there's going to be different types of sleep within that. Because you have some guided sleep, I believe, as well. Mm-hmm. And then within each one of those, individuals can customize. Can you just give a little bit of guidance about about the science behind it, and then from a user perspective, where to start and how to start playing with some of those controls to figure out and fine tune the perfect experience for each person?
Yeah, totally. So that's something that, as a consumer product, we're trying to solve for consumers, right? So that's something we're actively trying to do. Before, admittedly, we kind of basically gave everyone the controls and we said, hey, figure it out. Good luck, and we're trying to fix that, right? So one of the things that we've noticed and seen is actually, if you go to the app right now and you sign up, you'll actually be taken through a quiz, which will take you through those things. So this wasn't there when you tried it, Margaret. But basically, as we talked about, you can change neural effect levels. That is, the amount of science, I guess, we're adding to it. If you have ADHD, you actually need a higher level. If you have less ADHD and you go on the higher level, you will get a headache. Right? It is actually like changing, blood flow. So what's really interesting is people may find certain kinds of things beneficial and certain things don't. And we've actually kind of done a lot of experiments to get to this point. But now when you onboard, we actually ask you directly, do you have ADHD? Right? What's really interesting is a lot of people think they don't have ADHD. But if you actually put them on questionnaires, it's much higher than what is known. especially for people later in life that are like, no, that wasn't around, And like, I didn't know I had ADHD until I started working here. And that happens a lot. So that's something interesting. We ask if they have ADHD. Another thing we ask is how introverted or extroverted are you, right? And that actually does depend on how much stimulation in the music that you need. So another thing that we add to music is stimulation, which is the texture of the music. How many instruments are going on? How many different kinds of effects are? And if you can kind of think about it, someone that's introverted, they don't, it's like working in a library, they would probably choose, right? Maybe that's you, Margaret. You never put music on, right? So the best music for you is still music that has this modulation, but it's less things going on in the background to distract you.
Right.
But with someone with more extroverted, they actually need more stimulation. And we actually ask people if they like working in a library or in a coffee shop. Right. And people working in a coffee shop, they like more stuff going on in their music. So that's really helpful to determine, where people are on this category. And then we also ask them just straight out what kind of music they like, because it's not determinate on the music. It's more of the style. But everyone has these different kinds of connections to music and what they feel like it is. Some people hear music and they're like, oh, that's spa music. And some people go, that's really relaxing or whatever. And we're trying to decouple and demystify so that people can get in and load it. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but what we found is that every brain is different, and you may have ADHD or maybe a higher tendency, but you may be introverted, or you may be ambivert, or you may be extroverted. And when we start kind of combining all of those things together, the end result is a prescription, which I probably can't say, but it's kind of like a personalized experience that's going to get you the effects that you want.
When you and I talked back in January, one of the inputs you were discussing was the idea, because I'm seeing your Oura ring, here I am with mine and my Garmin, and we've got all these wearables and all this tech giving us information on our sleep patterns, on our heart rate, on our blood sugar, all the things, right? Have you guys made any progress in terms of integrating some of the data from that to really hyper personalize?
Yeah, that's something we're working on. We made a lot of progress on it. As you can assume, it's takes a lot of resources, I guess. But that is the vision of the app in the future, is that you have a wearable, it knows your HRV, it knows your GSR, which is a galvanic skin response. And we can actually change the music that you're listening to see how it responds to you and your body. So you can think about sleeping and you get disturbances in the night, and we know, because you're wearing a wearable, that you're tossing and turning. So we switch the music to maybe something that helps you go back to bed or whatever it may be. And that's some stuff that we're working on.
That's really exciting. I can see just major uses for that. Really fascinating. I'm just checking in over here in the chat in terms of really, okay, here's an interesting question. Have you used Brain FM in trauma therapy to help establish brain coherence and or heart brain coherence in people stuck in overwhelm or the freeze response? Any of you seen anything with that?
So I guess you asked me about clinical studies, and I kind of skipped that. So let me go into that a little bit. There's some really interesting things that we're doing. There's also some really interesting things MIT's doing right now, to kind of share you the breadth of technology, I guess. So one of the things we just finished was the clinical study with anesthesia to wake people up faster from anesthesia, because a lot of times people are really scared. It's a very traumatic event getting an operation, right? My fiance actually, we came up with the idea because she was getting her tonsils out, and I was terrified, right? So we ended up making relax music that we compared to the most relaxing sound in the world by Marconi Union. And it's like a published piece. It's like the hallmark of relaxing music built from science. And we were able to beat that by 40% and help people relax without the additional drugs or anti-anxiety medications before getting propofol or general anesthesia. And what we were really surprised is we actually helped people wake up faster by putting on our focus music, specifically adapted to this scenario, and people were able to wake up 15% faster. And that's a tremendous difference, because if you think about the recovery, that someone's recovering on average for 45 minutes, if you can wake up in 30 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever that is, the difference of propofol and amount of general anesthesia you need to consume or to go under is completely different. So there's some really interesting things that we're doing there. There's other people that are using technology that we have, like MIT, which is doing things for Alzheimer's. So they're actually doing studies with mouse and human trials where they are able to reverse plaque production in the brain for Alzheimer's. And that is something, it's insane, right? So it's something that's not actually a product that we have right now, but just to kind of show you the breadth and magnitude of things like this, it is appropriate. For the specific questions about trauma, the unfortunate part is just science is expensive. So any real clinical trials that we do, it costs us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're not $1 billion company yet, so we can't do all of them. But we have a lot of promise on those. Some things that I'm really interested in is pain reduction. That's something. And then we also have anecdotal experiences of our users that have used this to, recover from panic attacks or having traumatic experiences. But I can't, in a clinical version, say yes, and I have information on that.
Right, but you're getting anecdotal. I mean, I think that's where, being in the functional health space, we're very used to being kind of on the pioneering edge, and what we see in our offices often, we've been seeing it for a long time, and then the science comes out a few years later, and you're like, oh, that's what's happening. But we see it. So I'm assuming that you are seeing a lot of these things. I'm just back to the whole coming out of anesthesia. It's very traumatic going under, and it can be very traumatic for people coming out. Are you noticing not only does it speed the time, but does it ease the person out of it so that they're not? I mean, I've heard some nightmare stories of people coming out of it and like punching nurses and like the body is such a state, right?
That's exactly what happened. So I actually went, part of this whole process was finding a partner hospital that was like co-investing in this with us. And I watched a bunch of colonoscopies and endoscopies and all these different kinds of different procedures. And I was blown away by how the biggest problems for nurses specifically, which was like, you get this really big muscly guy, right? Got tattoos and stuff, right? And then you try to put a needle in his arm and he pulls because he's scared, right? It's not, everyone's scared, right? It doesn't matter who you are, right? And that's actually one of the worst things you can do, because then things get messy, or you miss or whatever, And we actually found that a lot of people had deeper relaxation, which allowed us to not have those problems. And then to the other point, when people were waking up, exactly that. So you can wake people up faster if you shake them or bang pots and pans, right? That will get people going. But then it's a very jolting experience being shooken and woken up, because you don't know where you are, you're disoriented. This isn't exact, but it's kind of like you're drunk, right? You're just like there and you're like, what's going on, right?
Right.
And what we found is people were able to wake up faster, but they were also coherent. So they were able to discharge faster and move on. And less crying and these emotional responses that people have because they don't know where they are, or less anger where they are, attacking nurses. And I've actually seen that. So it's really, really cool to see those things. That's kind of some of the start of what we're starting to experience.
Amazing. I want to ask I see a bunch of sort of like practical logistical questions here in terms
Let's dive
of
in.
is there a way to keep it playing while using your device for something else? And I admit that I don't use my phone to like do things. So if I'm using it on my phone, I'm using it for only the thing. I know on my computer, I use it both on my laptop as well as my phone, but my laptop is when I'm doing all the other things, and I know it works there. I'm assuming on the phone as well, allows you to like do other things at the same time.
So right now, I believe just because of the way Apple works, if you're using one audio and then you switch to like YouTube, the audio switches. I believe we're currently investigating on how to update that. But we currently, if you're using the phone, it's challenging to use another audio app like Audible or something like that.
But if it's audio, you could use something else on the phone, right?
Yes. Okay. So if you were taking notes or you were on some kind of Google Sheets or something, exactly, you could totally use Brain FM. It's basically like any other music service that you would play, like Spotify.
Right, just kind of running in the background. Exactly.
Yep.
And then some questions about which type of headsets are best. And I want to hear your answer first. I can share my personal preferences, but I'd love to hear do you have recommendations on what type of headsets?
Yeah. So first, it matters actually what mental state you're listening to. Oh, so the patterns that we talked about, they're actually at different frequencies. We could talk about the brain states of like alpha, theta, all that, but some of them are faster than others and slower. So focus, for example, is very fast compared to relax or sleep. So if you are using that in, like, let's say without headphones, it gets distorted a little bit and the quality of effects will go down. So we always recommend headphones for focus. Yeah. We actually, I recommend whatever headphones you like, to be honest. But sound canceling is really good. I use the Apple AirPods. I'm trying to see if I have the other ones, but we actually, in our clinical studies and things, I don't think I see them in my room, but we actually do the over-ear bone conducting headphones. So you can actually like still talk to people and all that stuff, and people really like that as well. For other mental states like relax, meditation, for sleep, and for nap, those are all really slow wave frequencies. So it's always gonna be better with headphones, but if you have a really great speaker and you want it to Bluetooth stream, you can get the same effects by having that and just playing that on a device or using headphones. So it's really up to you on what you're most comfortable doing if you're relaxing or taking a nap.
So that's a whole other piece that we just kind of dipped into in terms of what it's doing. Is it's actually the frequency of things. It's modulation. So there's a lot of different pieces here. You've got the modulation, you've got the salience, and now you're talking frequency as well.
Yeah. So the I apologize if I'm not like sharing them all up front, because actually frequency is the rate of how fast something modulates. Yes. So okay. It's that modulation effect, right? You can kind of think of it as on and off, right? There's two types of frequency. A lot of people think of as pitch, right? So it's like high, medium, or low. And what we're doing is we're doing a different type, which is actually just on and off, and how many times we're turning something on and off per second, right? So that's the effect of modulation that is kind of we're putting into these soundtracks disguised in certain bass frequencies. So we get, we're basically talking about, how the brain works, what sound is, right? And then also like, how do we encode the sound? And that's why it can get really intense very quickly.
It's really interesting. And I'm curious if there's different types of people, because for me, it's very easy to like wind up, a lot more difficult to wind down. Mm-hmm. So maybe in a situation like that, and I'm sure there's other people where it's the exact opposite, you would think of people like that, where I would need to use more, I'll use the word amplitude, but like a larger effect when it's time to chill versus I probably don't need as much when it comes to the focus and locking in, because I'm already often not fully, my thing is more that I'm just like, I've got 8 million thoughts going through my brain, and I just need to like focus on one channel for a minute. Right.
That's exactly right. So you got it. Like with some people we find basically have no problem focusing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they need help relaxing or sleeping. But a lot of our population are people that don't really mind relaxing, don't have a problem unplugging, but plugging is the hard part. So it's really one or the other. About 20% of our population is ambivalent, right? Where they're like, I need help with both things, right? But that's really it. It's like, on, off, or both, and that's, our brains and bodies are not designed to basically be a light switch, and we're trying to change that.
Okay. I see Karen's says, I imagine this could be used for addiction as well, which is a really interesting use case there. I don't know if you guys have heard anything anecdotally. I'm assuming you would have mentioned a study if you've done that, but has anyone mentioned that? I know you guys get tons of emails
yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'd have to check to be fair. I can see how it could be helpful because of some of the things that we've done in pain management. And some of the things we've explored there. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to check with the scientists on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Another practical question here. Anne asks, are you integrated with Muse?
I don't know. No, we're not integrated with Muse. Yeah, Muse does. Muse is, for everyone else, is a wearable that basically measures some of your brain. And that would be like one of the potential partners that we could do eventually. They do their own sounds, but they're not based on the same science that we have. All of our science is actually patented. I believe we have like 14 patents on all of the ways we make our music. So it's specific to Brain FM.
You mentioned energy and then workouts.
Mm-hmm.
Energy, I'm assuming, is that things like getting pumped up before like doing a big talk, or like when you say energy, like what is it that you mean in terms of the energy category?
Yeah, I mean, so these are in active development, so we don't have these released right now, but that's exactly kind of what we're playing with. This is more of a motivation thing. Focus, what we found is focus, whether it's creative work or deep work or learning, it's kind of like you're already doing the activity, you're already skiing down the mountain, and you just want to go faster, or you want to start ski longer, right? And there's another type of focus that people want to like do things. So that could be getting pumped up, or it could be, I want to clean the house, right? And we actually get a ton of people that put Brain FM on to clean, right? It's not something that we necessarily like. We don't want to be the cleaning app, but we have a ton of people that do use it for that. So we're kind of thinking of a category specifically for those tasks that are more menial, I guess.
Right. And I know I've heard, because in my research for our conversation today, I was listening to a couple of your podcast interviews, and the idea of like training. So I'm a marathon runner, and the idea of kind of like locking into flow state and like really, and like using it, sort of leveraging it for that, as well as, and in my case, even more importantly, the recovery aspect of things. I used to do these track workouts at an annoyingly late hour. I'm normally in bed very, very early, and I would do these workouts at like 6 p.m. once a week, and it would just throw all the things. And I wish I had known about using it in this way now, because it was like, I mean, the supplements and the things I did to try to get my body to just like come down after this really hard workout so late in the day for me. But I've heard through other interviews you've done of some people using this, pairing recovery immediately post exercise so that they can like really help the body settle into that recovery state even faster.
Yep. Yeah, we have I know for certain that we have a lot of athletes that use this for that, as well as like top physical therapists that recommend Brain FM while people are doing stretches or body manipulations or breathing exercises. This is tangential to even like meditation, where people have a meditation practice and they're like, cool, I know how to meditate. And then they try Brain FM and they meditate with Brain FM and they go, whoa, I went to a completely different level, right? And again, it's because you can kind of think of the music and these patterns in the music as your guide to having higher depths of focus or relax or sleep or whatever that may be.
I love that. I'm seeing, I teased that I was going to say my thoughts on the headsets, and then I never shared my thoughts on the headsets. So I will share. I have the big like ear covering ones that are sound blocking. I find that for focus, I really like those. I have the AirPods that you're wearing right now. I find they make my ears hurt, so I don't use them nearly as much, but I like the big ones that just cover everything, block out all the sound for focus. I wouldn't obviously sleep with them in because I'm not a back sleeper.
Yeah, I have those too.
And then I have found, I personally still find them, what I've done with sleep, I don't always use them for sleep. I've gotten actually pretty good at sleeping without sound. I used to need stuff always to help me sleep. I've gotten pretty good at without it. But what I will do is sometimes because I don't have the fancy sleep headphones. I know they have some that are made that are like flush with your head, so you can like lie in different things. But I will, even if I just put it in one ear, I find that it still, I'm sure it's better if you have it in both, but I will, if I'm lying on one side, I'll just pop it. Like, if I have a wired headset that I use, I'll turn. And I saw somebody say, oh, I don't like to have the phone in the bedroom, which I don't either, but you can download some of these things, right? Because I know I use some of my sleep ones are downloaded to my phone. So even when I have everything on airplane mode, the phone is on, but there's no conducting that's happening. And I will just do that with the cord and just stick it in whatever ear is up. And I find that works really nicely.
Yeah, all of our stuff is actually made for monaural. So that means that you can listen to it with 2 ears, 1 ear, or whatever, because of the effect. So that's the benefit of the pre-processing. And is especially effective for people that have auditory issues. Because of that. Yeah. One thing that's actually super interesting, which, again, we're kind of jumping all over the place. So I'll take, again, ADHD here. I'll take responsibility for that. But what's really interesting is that audio is one of the things that our brain, there are no negative effects, like you said, unless you put the volume super high. That's like literally the only one. Because our brain has all these protection mechanisms for sound. It doesn't have the same protection mechanisms for visual. So we could actually, the stimulation, these patterns, we could actually flash strobe lights at you and you would have similar effects. However, I think it's 1 out of 80,000 people have epilepsy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we choose sound, because it's the highest fidelity sensitivity that we have. But there's literally no side effects from it. And that's, again, one of the cool things about just our brains.
That's really fascinating. And I will share that I have learned recently that I am very much not an auditory person, meaning that like I don't, if I'm listening to something and someone teaches me something and I only hear it, I can barely remember what I've just heard. I'm very visual. I like to see it, or even better, like touch and feel it. And then I can really anchor it. But on the flip side of that, I'm hypersensitive. It's like I almost can't manage it because I'm not auditory. When I mentioned, if I'm hearing music, it's like wildly distracting. And so even in somebody like me, it still really is effective. So I like what I take from that is that it doesn't matter how auditory you are or not. The sound is going to do its thing. And I think as well, the fact that it's that mono, what was the second half of that word? Mono?
Monaural. So binaural, like binaural beats is 2 ears, and monaural is
the binaural. Yeah. So that's right there. A major advantage of this is only needing the one. Mm-hmm. Are there people, so you just, I think I know the answer to this, but I don't want to make assumptions. We just talked about the epilepsy with sight. Are there people for whom, where it might not be something significant like, stimulating an epileptic attack, but are there people for whom it either just does not work, or who just really aren't good candidates for this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something I've asked my neuroscience a bunch. From what we can tell, this creates an effect in everyone's brains that do listen to it. Mm-hmm. But it comes down to people's perception, right? So if you go in and you say, hey, there's no way this can work, it actually still doing something for your brain. It's not necessarily suggestive, but if you're like, it's kind of like if I take, I don't know, Tylenol, and I'm like, this, like Tylenol works. Like we have conclusive evidence from science, or actually, I'm not a doctor, so, I'm not, you guys know, but like, so basically we know Tylenol works for a lot of people, but if you go and you say, oh, it still hurts, and that's your mind is made up,
Yeah.
that's going to happen. So, I guess besides that, we haven't found those. There are people that may have headaches and they actually have the neural effect level up too high. Right. Or we have people that maybe have it on too low, and we have to do a better job at kind of matching those characteristics and things. But we haven't seen from science that this has a negative or it doesn't create an effect in people. The biggest effect, though, that is measurable is people with, ADHD, or specifically people that have more motivational, more like challenges doing something. So people that have like sleep problems, this really works because it's solving that. It's more perceivable because they're like, there's a pain in my life that I want fixed. Wow, this fixed it.
We experience the same kind of thing. Sometimes I've had clients come to me and I'm like, this is going to sound weird, but you're not sick enough yet. Like they need to be, some in our work, when we're asking people to make some hard choices around food and take different supplements and that kind of stuff, the motivation really needs to be there. With yours, it's not nearly as sort of, asking as much of people, but I can totally see if there isn't as much room for that improvement. If you're just fine tuning things, then they're not going to perceive it as significantly as you've got somebody who has a real challenge and then they experience that significant benefit. Speaking of, I had my last question for you. Oh, is there, I think it's the second to last question because I still had another. Oh, I know, I just found it. So second to last question is, for those of us who came in after the quiz, can we do the quiz? I saw somebody had asked that earlier who's already been using you guys for a while, and I have as well. Or I guess I should say, are there ways for us to, do a bit of a self-analysis, or is that tool kind of available even once somebody has been using Brain FM for a little while to help fine tune like what ways they could optimize?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think from a product standpoint, I believe you can go into like settings and there'll be somewhere that says take a quiz.
Okay.
But before you do that, I would say if you've tried it and you're using the platform and like it, I think it'd just be helpful to kind of tell you what the quiz is doing, and let you know some of the things that you should be aware of, right? So right now, the product, it basically, like, the quiz filters you to certain kinds of things. And I think if you're using the product now, you probably know, like, hey, I like this type of music with maybe this kind of science level, this neural effect level that we're adding to it. And I would say that, like, if you're getting the benefits of the service, don't touch anything.
Right.
You want to keep that, right? The quiz is more of like a starting point to get kicked off in. So I don't necessarily think it's necessarily that you need it, but if you're not getting those effects, you can try taking the quiz. And what we find is that some people, they're like, I want maximum focus. So they put it on neural effect level 3, and it's just way too intense for them. Right. And they really need like 1 or 2. And it's not like how much productivity you want. It's more of like, how much pain are you in? If you take too much Tylenol, it's actually more harmful than you think good, in this bad example I'm coming up with. So that's one of them. And then I think the other thing is just like really finding out what works for you. Like if you have the challenge of focusing, right? Or, we talked about this earlier, like brain fog, or like starting your day and having clarity, focus would be really good for that. Yeah. We also have people that use these mental states interchangeably together. So what's really cool is if you start your day and instead of just jumping into focus, right? And again, experiment, but you can start with a relax first, or doing a meditation first, and you're really centering yourself, and then you jump into focus. Right. We have some people that do focus, then they do relax for 15 minutes, and then they go back into focus. And you end up getting an amplified effect because your brain's like up here. It basically goes down a little bit, not all the way. and then it resets and you can go higher than before.
Right.
And there's just like different things that you can do, whether it's starting your day with it or ending your day. One of the things I personally do is I use meditation and I go on a walk, right? So I'm not even I'm active meditation, I guess you would call it. But I find when I'm walking and I have the music, it's just way better of an experience. And I actually end up having my own type of meditation, and I highly recommend doing that. It's really cool to switch from having a really stressful day or a lot of context switching and just saying, okay, I'm going to take 20 minutes before I go to my family, right? So I can be my 100%.
I love it. So this is my last question. Do you notice that people have a lasting effect beyond the use? For example, I mean, I know that it's affecting your brain while you're listening. But then one of the things I'm noticing, for example, I have on a couple of occasions turned on Brain FM, had my headphones and not put them on and locked in, and then looked down and saw my headphones there. Now, this has happened after like months and years of using it, but I do feel like my brain knows the patterns better now, which would make sense from kind of a neuroplasticity perspective. Do you find that people's brains adapt to this and are able to lock in even faster and sometimes even beyond and outside of the app?
Yeah. So there's other parts of it. And again, I always hint at more science because there's always more, but there's also, we're talking about physical characteristics of the brain and a lot of this stuff, but there's actually also psychological things that happen to the brain as well. So you can kind of think of priming as an example of that. So from a physiological level, the more you use Brain FM, the faster it'll work for you, because what's happening is you're basically those patterns, your brain's more used to them, so it's easier to lock into them. To your point. At the same time, there's also a psychological component of priming, or like a Pavlovian response too, where you're like, hey, this is the habit that I do when I focus, right? And that also adds benefits. That is completely separate than a lot of the science that we do, but is an effect of us, being human. And it's a really cool value add that stacks on top of using Brain FM.
I love it. We didn't get into compose. There's lots of different things. I really want to respect your time because it's late where you are. Look at the sunset while we were talking.
I know I don't have the lights on. I can turn them on, but I didn't want to leave.
I want to respect your time. Thank you so much. I've learned so much. I was already a super fan. Now I feel like I'm a super, super fan. I really encourage all of you, if you haven't yet tried it, try it and think about this as an additional tool in your toolkit for your clients, because there's so many places that it can really enhance what we're already doing to help our clients with their stress levels, with their focus. I know, we were sharing before we clicked the record button that, for me, I don't actually use the relax and the meditation as much because for me, one of my biggest sources of stress is having, more to do than there are hours in the day. And one of the ways that Brain FM really helps my stress levels is just the fact that I now know that I can click into focus and get her done. Which is it just kind of lets me take a big breath and put my shoulders down, because I'm not afraid that I can't do it. I know that with this tool, I can lock in and go. So so many applications. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I love the research. I love all of it. This has been wonderful. Dan, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here. See you.